After years of decline, American satisfaction with federal government services has jumped more than 4%. That's according to the American Customer Satisfaction Index 2022 federal government report. Forrest Morgeson is the director of research at the organization. Forrest, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
So what are the factors that you measure when calculating customer satisfaction?
Well, we have sort of a complex survey instrument that we use to interview several thousand Americans each year, and we look at various attributes that are important in determining satisfaction with federal government services. We also look at a variety of indicators of that satisfaction itself, and then some outcomes of satisfaction, where we look at the customer's likelihood to complain, their likelihood to develop trust with the government and recommend government services and things like that.
And you also look at things like the agency's website, how good it is, how easy it is to maneuver around it.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are really important parts of interactions with federal government at this time, as we all know. The ability to get onto an agency's or a program's website and easily download information or download forms that you may need to complete, those kinds of things. So we look at those websites, and we look at customer service personnel and customer service representatives if you need to call in or interact in some other way, on site still for some services. So we try to have it as broad and deep as possible across the different ways that citizens actually interact with federal government.
And last year you saw an overall 4.4% increase. It went to a score of 66.3. What contributed to that rise?
Well, there were a variety of factors that went into that rise. I think ultimately the interpretation that can be taken away is a lot of it was just sort of clawing back some of the losses that occurred before, but mostly during COVID. COVID obviously had a huge impact across the economy in companies' abilities to offer, their normal goods and services to consumers. And the same can be said for the federal government as well, where it was just more difficult to serve the larger number of people who needed service.
And how does this number compare historically? You guys have been doing this survey for many years.
We have. This has been going on for more than 20 years now. Historically, the number is still a little bit low. So as we talk about in the report that we released last week, it's clawed back. It's gotten back some of the losses that occurred during COVID, but it hasn't gotten all the way back. And historically, and this probably won't come as a huge surprise, but historically we've seen the federal government come in somewhere between a little bit and quite a bit below the average customer satisfaction for the private sector. So the number is still well below the private sector. It's gained back some of what it lost during COVID, but it's still got a ways to go.
And in 2022, the Department of Interior topped the satisfaction index for the second year in a row. Why is that? We have historically seen the Department of Interior, interestingly enough, come in near the top among all the departments that we measure satisfaction with. Generally, we attribute this to some of the programs within the Department of Interior, and particularly the National Park Service. Those tend to be relatively low-cost services that citizens really, really enjoy, given their natural beauty and all of those kinds of things. And so we generally attribute Department of Interior's strong performance as a department to that particular program within the department. And what other agencies did well for customer satisfaction?
To be perfectly honest with you, there aren't a great many that we point out as being leaders across the economy in terms of customer service. Interior is usually up there at the top, and we'll have a few others that do well.
Then what about the ones that don't do so well? Who scored low?
Well, I don't know that this will come as a huge surprise to anyone who follows these sorts of things, but the IRS usually comes in at the bottom, the Department of Treasury and the IRS. And that is, of course, given the nature of their mission, not terribly surprising.
Well, I was going to say, that's kind of not fair. I mean, nobody wants to pay taxes.
That's right. Yeah, and that's exactly right. And we're always careful to point that out. I mean, of course, we would like to see, more efficient and better service coming from even the IRS. But the reality is that given what they're doing, which is essentially forcing us to give them their money, it's never going to be a highly satisfying experience, no matter how strong they improve it. Again, you'd like to see some improvements at the margins, but the reality of the nature of the mission is going to make it difficult.
Well, what are those improvements that they can make? And I know that you're a research organization, not in the business of making recommendations, but I'm just curious as to what you think could be done. They can't change their mission, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think they've done some of it, and we have seen some improvement, at least within particular different methods of filing over the years, as they've moved to push as many individual filers as they can over to electronic filing, and some of the ease that brings to the tax filing process. They've done a little bit better, and I think that may continue as they're able to get more and more citizens over there, and more small and mid-sized businesses to adopt those relatively more pleasing kinds of electronic methods. It's tough, though. Not only is their mission a difficult one, but they're a political lightning rod. So the agency itself, whenever we have a shift in Congress or in the White House, the agency itself may find itself with very different mandates, very different staffing levels, budgets, and those kinds of things. So it is a difficult mission.
All right. Well, Forrest, thanks so much for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and hit the subscribe button to be the first to watch our latest content. Full shows and more are available on our website at govmatters.tv.